Okay, my name is Gillian Muldrock, and 3 weeks ago a young artist and I went on an artiscape in the Coromandel where we got the opportunity to visit a range of artists and working in a range of disciplines: painters, sculptors, potters, jewellery makers, photographers, and meet them and talk to them and see where they worked in their studios, their workspace. So not just viewing their art, but viewing where they lived and worked too. So it was just a fantastic opportunity, something I've always wanted to do, and so I was extremely excited about being able to do it. And the young artist, who I convinced him that this would be a good idea and an excellent way of meeting some artists in the mainstream that have been working for a number of decades, some of them, some even 4 or 5 decades. Yeah, 2 of the highlights of the weekend for me were one, reconnecting with another ex-student. Both the young artist and another artist on the art trail were ex-students of mine from when I was a high school art teacher, and it was amazing for me to see how far Jacqueline Alley, the name of this artist, had gone in 18 years since she'd left school. And I think for the young artist, brilliant for him to see that this could be him in 10 or 15 years' time. So that there was a journey that he goes on or undertakes as an artist, and it doesn't stay the same. Things change as he goes along this journey over the decades. And so that was a very special connection to see the young artist and Jackie get to meet. And it was amazing too, because she was so well established that she was just super busy that morning, in fact, but she still took time to talk to the young artist, talked about her inspiration, her ideas, showed us some really amazing reference books, and the young artist was blown away with how much her paintings actually sold for her original paintings. And she was in such demand that she was selling limited edition prints, and so it gave the young artist all sorts of marketing ideas about what he could do in the future once he had established himself, which was really brilliant. The other second very special event, and probably the most important event from the weekend, was when we went to Michael Smothers' studio, where a group of artists, including him, had their work there for us to look at and talk about. And Michael Smothers is an extremely well-known New Zealand painter who has been working for 4 or 5 decades, and he immediately engaged us both in talking about his work and wanting us to demonstrate what he was all about and what his work was all about. So it was an amazing experience being able to go to the Coromandel with this young artist. And in terms of what he got out of the weekend, and even myself and some of the other artists, I think it was a reciprocated thing. Not only did the young artist receive huge amounts of affirmation for what he was doing, and people telling him he was very brave and courageous, and it was amazing that he had the amount of work he did at his young age, 3 books published, that type of thing. And so not only did the other artists encourage the young artists, but I think because he was interested in talking to them, he gave them a sense of encouragement, inspiration. Some of them obviously hadn't thought of doing a book and looked at his books and thought, oh, maybe that's an idea for me. So it was a two-way street in that sense, that I think everyone got something out of it. So the experience with Michael Smothers and meeting him at his house in Otama, and it was quite incredible. Once he had sort of talked to the young artists and explained that this day and what the weekend was about was us finding out about other artists, he then set about explaining to us what his work was about and the link between colour and sound. And we were both looked quite sort of uncertain at the start, but then he sat down at this beautiful grand piano in a gallery section of his house, and he asked us to look at a particular painting. And as he played a particular note on the piano, a certain ring of colour resonated or came out at you, and it was quite amazing to witness and be part of, that he actually demonstrated to us the connection between colour and sound. And we were just going, as he played these harmonies, the different colours came out at you and receded and came out and went back. So it was something quite different and something quite new that neither of us had come across or seen before. He took the young artist aside and asked him to interact with him using a group of coloured rods, a rainbow spectrum of colours that he referred to as colour harmonies, like you'd have harmonies on a piano. And they discussed and talked about, to start with, complementary colours, and the young artist knew all about that. And then Michael Smothers said, what do you know about colour harmonies? And they talked about that. And they ended up putting the coloured rods into a sequence showing the colour spectrum. It was amazing to see that Michael Smithers also loved colour, but had gone off on a different tangent. He was looking at colour and sound, and it was a really interesting concept, I think, not just to the young artist, but I was fascinated as well, and it made me want to buy his book because of that, and find out more about it. That he was working now in his 70s on three-dimensional structures. He'd moved away from painting, and to me it was a brilliant example to show the young artist that your work doesn't stay the same, that it evolves, that it changes as you go throughout your life and career, as things affect you. To me, the Coromandel, the whole landscape, the light, there's something special about that place. That affected the artist, and that came through very strongly, and they mentioned it to the young artist. And I think he could appreciate that this beautiful environment was very inspiring, and a source and reference for most of the artists. I don't think that you could say that any of them weren't affected by where they lived and worked. So there were just so many things that I think it made the young artist realise that he's got so much in common with these people. Yes, art's the initial link, but it was much deeper than that. And to me, seeing someone of Michael Smithers' generation interact, engage, discuss, question, talk to each other with a young artist in his 20s was just a very moving experience, and it affects me very deeply to see that I could sense that they wanted to help this young artist, not just Michael, but all these other artists wanted to help him on his journey and help him reach his potential. And to me, that caring, encouraging, inclusive environment was just amazing to be part of. Sorry. It. The interaction with Michael Smithers, I think, was particularly special. I wondered initially why Michael was taking so much time with the young artist, but he took me aside just before we left and said to me, I can see myself at his age in this young person, and he obviously connected in that sense. He took me aside and said that he really connected with the young artist because he'd been very similar to him at his age, which of course is over 50 years ago now. And I think the offspin for the young artist was he could view himself long term throughout his life, seeing that this could be him at 70, 75 years old. So it really gave him hope for the future, that this career is a lifetime passion. And I think that was one of the things that really came through, was the passion that all these artists had for what they were doing, and they connected with the passion that the young artist had for what he was doing. And that was something they immediately had in common. Things kept coming up all weekend that the young artist had in common that we didn't realise before we went on this trip. With so many of the artists, of course, the passion, their love of art, but the environmental underlying theme and topics, or from their images and the connection with looking after the environment and climate change, was a really strong one that a number of artists felt a very deep connection with the young artist because of that component in his work. Things like they use resin test pots, that was another common thing, that they love colour. So there were just so many things that I think it made the young artist realise that he's got so much in common with these people. Yes, art's the initial link, but it was much deeper than that.